Trump has warned that unless China meets U.S. demands, including buying more American goods and lifting restrictions on rare earth minerals, he's prepared to impose additional tariffs. The president will also visit Japan to promote U.S. investments and follow up on a recent $550 billion trade deal. In South Korea, Trump is expected to discuss trade negotiations, including a contentious $350 billion investment fund. Now we move on to our next news. U.S. President Donald Trump has expressed confidence on Monday that China will not invade Taiwan, emphasizing his strong relationship with Chinese President Xi Jinping ahead of their upcoming meeting in South Korea. When asked about a Pentagon assessment predicting a possible Chinese attempt to seize Taiwan in 2027, Trump has said the following.
I think we'll be just fine with China. China doesn't want to do that. First of all, the United States is the strongest military power in the world by far. It's not even close. Not even close. We have the best equipment. We have the best of everything, and nobody's going to mess with that. And I don't see that at all with President Xi. I think we're going to get along very well as it pertains to Taiwan and others. Now, that doesn't mean it's not the apple of his eye, because probably it is. But I don't see anything happening. We have a very good trade relationship.
While he did not explicitly commit to defending Taiwan by force, he stressed that the United States remains the world's strongest military power. Trump has also said that he expects positive relations regarding Taiwan and other matters as well. Now, the U.S. recognizes Beijing, not Taiwan, but is legally required to provide Taiwan with weapons for self-defense. Now, for this discussion, we go back to Dr. Asta Chada. She's a Ritsumeikan University doctor, joins us live from Warsaw. Thank you very much, Dr. Chada, for staying with us. Doctor, why is U.S. required to protect or to give protection to Taiwan? And also, how should U.S. balance its legal obligation to arm Taiwan with its official recognition of Beijing? U.S. President Donald Trump has expressed confidence on Monday that China will not invade Taiwan, emphasizing his strong relationship with Chinese President Xi Jinping ahead of their upcoming meeting in South Korea. When asked about the Pentagon assessment predicting a possible Chinese attempt to seize Taiwan in 2027, Trump has said the following.
We'll be just fine with China. China doesn't want to do that. First of all, the United States is the strongest military power in the world by far. It's not even close. Not even close. We have the best equipment. We have the best of everything, and nobody's going to mess with that. And I don't see that at all with President Xi. I think we're going to get along very well as it pertains to Taiwan and others. Now, that doesn't mean it's not the apple of his eye, because probably it is. But I don't see anything happening. We have a very good trade relationship.
Now we welcome back Dr. Asta Chada. She joins us live from Warsaw. Thank you very much, Dr. Chada, for staying with us. Now, looking at this, why is U.S. required to protect or help Taiwan with its defense? And also, how should U.S. balance its legal obligation to arm Taiwan with its official recognition of Beijing, but not Taiwan?
Right, thank you for having me again.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, U.S. has had previously committed. I mean, of course, there is no in no way a move away from one China policy that United States also follows. However, U.S. is very committed to the security of the region for several reasons. I mean, one is the very fact that it has several alliances and several stakes in the wider Indo-Pacific, and Taiwan is pretty much at the heart of that region. That's one. And two, China is a rising superpower, so as to say, or a rising competitor to United States. And I mean, for US security interest, it obviously is one of those bargaining chips. And three, Taiwan is, one of the most what you would say indispensable countries in that sense when it comes to semiconductors and trade with the United States and maintaining some sort of a US based or US supported rule based international order. So United States is very committed, or has been, at least I would say, very committed to maintaining security and safety, not just in South China Sea, but also in East China Sea, right? And hence supporting Taiwan in its defense in one way, supporting Taiwan as a country that represents democratic values or shared values with the United States or with the Western world becomes extremely important, even for the optics, even as a normative, power. But it's very interesting that President Trump, in his address, mentioned that he doesn't see that China would want to be aggressive towards Taiwan, because clearly that has not been the Chinese stance traditionally. I mean, China has been reiterating again and again that Taiwan is an inherent part of China, and they would pretty much take any steps as required to integrate Taiwan eventually. So President Trump, trying to downplay the risk of Chinese military clash or Chinese aggression over Taiwan does come as a surprise, as does his boasting of US military superiority as a deterrent force.
Yes, and Dr. Chadha, building on that, as you've already mentioned, why Taiwan is an asset to US. Does downplaying this Pentagon warnings about China and Taiwan undermine US strategic credibility over there?
Yeah, excellent question again. Yes, I mean, absolutely. Downplaying the Taiwan risk, I mean, something that has consistently made it to US foreign policy and US security policy towards the Indo Pacific. So, downplaying, I'm not saying that showing a shift, but definitely downplaying this risk suggests a potential willingness in some way to deprioritize an inherently or a very traditionally core security issue in favor of some economic or trade gains that President Trump is trying to achieve here in its talks with China. And this also shows in some way a very highly transactional behavior, which could signal to Beijing that there is US is in some way more interested in securing its domestic economic interests over the wider regional security or the global security that US had been traditionally committed to. And lastly, he's trying to looks like President Trump's words looks like he's suggesting the possibility of separating a very high stakes Taiwan security issue from trade negotiations, which has previously not been the case. Taiwan issue usually more or less in one way or another does creep into any of these bilateral discussions or multilateral forum discussions that happen. And lastly, I mean, in terms of regional security, as you mentioned, there is, even through words, there is a certain erosion of deterrence, right? Any suggestion of a softening US stance on Taiwan, even if it is rhetorical, is very destabilizing, because it risks undercutting the credibility of US security guarantees for key partners. And again, we are not just talking about partners like Taiwan, we are talking about Japan, South Korea, and Philippines, because all of them are perceiving this in some way as US trying to in some way erode its own deterrence deterrence tactics. And lastly, this is going to feed into some sort of a regional anxiety, because I mean, any Chinese action, let's say, towards Taiwan does in fact impact the regional security. So I think this push away from military deterrence and going towards securing their own or America first economic security objectives does seem like a serious downplay of the Taiwan security risk.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chadha, for that insight and staying with us throughout our news. Now we move on to our next news. US President Donald Trump and Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese have agreed to boost cooperation on critical minerals and rare earths. aiming to reduce America's reliance on China. This deal comes as part of a strategy to ensure a proper and steady supply of essential resources. The U.S. Export-Import Bank, or EXIM, has announced more than $2.2 billion in financing for projects between the two countries. Companies like VHM, Latrobe, Magnesium, and Arafura Rare Earths will receive financing to advance their mineral projects in Australia. EXIM also expands its support for American-based rare earth projects, including the Hellick Creek site in Wyoming. This new partnership is expected to strengthen global supply chains and secure import resources for both nations. Now for this discussion, we welcome Andrew K.P. Long. He's a China strategist, joins us live from Cairo. Thank you very much, Andrew, for joining us again. Good to see you. Andrew, looking at this, should U.S. prioritize alliances like this one with Australia to secure critical minerals over rebuilding its own domestic supply chains? Do you think this is a long-term solution for them? Is government financing of mineral projects abroad an effective strategy?
Well, long-term is the right word because the China's grip on the world's mineral rare earth supply chain has been long established over decades. As I explained on this channel many times, supply is not the real issue because that's why Trump wanted the rare earths in Greenland. He wanted the rare earths in Ukraine. And now, of course, Australia is a close American military ally. So he wants to lots of minerals in Australia. So that's the supply side. But the supply, as I said, is not the issue because just the supply does not translate into the production of these very finely refined and highly polluting processes that are necessary to produce the critical rare earth elements. And there are hundreds of various elements, and the processes are all very different, and they're all very complicated. It's not as if there's one process for one particular element. There could be multiple, very highly complicated processes for different elements or different parts of an element. So it's a highly complicated skills, knowledge, and technical precision developed over many decades. And they're highly polluting because that's why in the beginning, no country wanted them. They all lumped to China decades ago. And China has now developed this capability, is now weaponizing it as a countermeasure against the United States. Yes, long-term, getting more supply, it could boost up Americans' defense in terms of reliance on minerals, but not in the short term. It's unlikely to result in any immediate gain, particularly the critical elements. There are about a dozen of them, which goes into F-35 fighter planes, into high-precision missiles. So that's China's trump card. So China's, with this trump card, China's unlikely to just to give in to American coercion. So I don't think that there is an immediate gain, and yet it's a long-term plan.
And how do you think this would, or this increased U.S.-Australia cooperation, or this, as you also mentioned, that this is a long-term strategy and a new Trump's card. So do you think this will impact on upcoming summit between President Trump and President Xi Jinping?
Well, I think the both sides understand the dynamic. I mean, we're not small boys playing simple games. So both sides under the dynamics, and Trump administration is trying to test the China's resolve, and China's showing is the resolve, and not only on minerals, but also by pivoting its trade to the global south. And in fact, over the past couple of months, China's overall trade, even though the trade with the United States as the largest market perhaps in the world, has shrunk. But even though the United States is the largest market. But in fact, in terms of China's trade, it only accounts for less than 10% of China's total trade, because China's been trading with the rest of the world for a long, long time. And also, China's trade is not just in direct products, it's in components and